So I'm going to bring up our first presenter, who is a U of I alumni working at Wolfram Alpha, and he says he pretends to understand the television show Lost. Yeah, right on. And that he thinks that we all deserve a life sentence. So our first presenter of this evening, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Fritz.
Life sentence. What does that term invoke? Probably some sort of prison, a seclusion, and isolation. A life sentence is changing, life-changing, no doubt, but I think it should be a positive change. The fact is that people will summarize your life in one sentence, grammatically speaking. And it's not a slogan or a mission statement, but it's your legacy, and I think that we each should have one. So I got interested in this topic when I was researching some similar things, and Claire Booth Luce, the person on the left there, coined this idea of a life sentence. The anecdote goes that in 1962, she met with JFK, and she was concerned that his scattered focus domestically and abroad was going to be troublesome. So she expressed this concern succinctly: a great man is one sentence. Lincoln's sentence: he preserved the Union and freed the slaves. FDR lifted us out of a Great Depression and won a world war. Tracy Jordan of NBC's 30 Rock lives every week like it's Shark Week. So what do you want to be known for? Sociologist Anthony Campolo discusses a study in which participants 95 years and older were surveyed as to what they would do differently if they had life to do over again, a do-over, so to speak. And I think it's a fascinating question for us to think about, and the responses were really fascinating as well. The three responses that constantly emerged were that they would risk more, they would reflect more, and they would do more things that would live on after they were gone, or they would leave a legacy. So risk more, reflect more, leaving a legacy. I often remember things best with acronyms or other devices to help with this, so I've come up with a really helpful one here, and that is rural or something like that. I grew up 15 minutes west of here in the village of Mahomet, and I think that is Illinois residents south of I-80. We can never quite escape this word. So hopefully it'll help. Just stick with this presentation and remember those 3 points there. And speaking of rural, this is me in a wheelbarrow full of grass. Your life sentence is bound to change over time, so I thought it would help to look back through my life to kind of see how my life sentence has evolved over time. So when I was younger, it was probably he lives life for himself. Life was all about me, as I'm sure many kids were, but I had a very limited worldview. In middle school and junior high was super awkward. You probably can't tell how awkward I was because I'm obviously the star football player. But junior high was all about trying to fit in and trying to fit into the social landscape. And that's what my worldview was limited to, just my current life and the smaller things. And needless to say, football didn't last very long for me. But my worldview, my life sentence continued to expand in high school and college. And as those years flew by, my sentence became he lives life with no regrets. And I found that this ideology for me is especially profound at the end of certain elements of my life: high school, college, job transitions. When we see things winding down, we try to squeeze as much life as we can out of it. So where am I now? How has my sentence progressed after college up to the point of my life now? I'll come back to this in a little bit, but first I want to go back to the 3 points of rural in a little more detail and go through those. So the first one here is risk more. David Michael Moore, one of our presenters later, is talking about the art of failure, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation because it's a key aspect here. A somewhat cliche example of a man with no fear is Thomas Edison, but I think it's a very apt example nonetheless. If Edison hadn't failed and failed repeatedly, he might not have become America's most well-known and prolific innovator. He's quoted to have said, "I have not failed, I just found 10,000 ways that it won't work." And as an innovator, this realization of his came through certain amounts of reflection, which is the second part of rural. And taking time to reflect is not something that comes very easily or naturally for me. I get very wrapped up in the present, in planning for the future and everything that's going on in my life right now. But it's something that I'm putting more value into and something that I'm working on. So for the next 20 seconds, the next slide, I'm going to shut up and give you guys just a little bit of time to reflect on your life sentence. This is awkward, but do it. So finally, the L is leave a legacy. And I'm guessing if you had enough time there to even begin to think of not how awkward that was and think about your life sentence, I think this legacy is something that nearly everyone has ingrained in their inner being, this desire to live a life that impacts others, whether it's changes the life of one person or millions. So a couple examples here: Jesus, westernized white Jesus on the left, and realistic Jesus on the right there. He used one of my favorite life sentences biblically, and he says, "I am," which was just a very simple and elegant way to say I was, I am, and I always will be, and I think it's fascinating. But second here, we have Cubs fan Steve Bartman at the 2003 NLCS. Unfortunately for him, unfortunately for Cubs and Cubs fans, and unfortunately for all of us, we can never have complete control over every situation we find ourselves in. But with that said, we do directly control the choices we make. Unfortunately, we don't always make the best decisions, and that's not to throw these guys under the bus at all, because I'll be the first to admit I make bad decisions all the time. But their legacies have left an undeniable mark on the state of Illinois that it might not overcome in the public's eye for quite some time. So circling back to myself, the progression of my life sentence, I really wanted to come up with an elaborate, clever one and get a ton of laughs, but really what I settled on was that he loves God and he loves people, because that's what is important to me and what I want my legacy to be. But I don't want this to be all about me. I would love to hear what you guys can come up with. I'm sure there are some truly phenomenal other sentences out there. So tweet yours with this hashtag or connect with me after PK, and let's see if we can't change the world one life sentence at a time. Thank you all. Have a great night.